Welcome back to Tea Time with Loki. Today we're going to discuss Yggdrasil. I'm not going to go too in-depth on anything. I'm just going to go over the basics of Yggdrasil, and then as podcasts go on, I will be answering questions as well as going into a little bit more detail. So, Yggdrasil is basically the tree of life in Norse mythology. It is the eternal green ash tree, ASH. Every realm hangs on its own branch, and if the tree would shake or fall, so would all of the realms. So it's basically the universe. It's what holds everything together. Yggdrasil is also called Mimir's tree because the wells of Mimir are at the roots, which we'll get there. The idea of the world tree is also present in many other Germanic tribes, so it's not specific just to Norse mythology. The name Yggdrasil is actually a kenning. It's a mythological metaphor that's used in the Edda in the Havamal. So Yggdrasil is actually a combination of two words. So Ygr, which is one of Odin's names, which means the Terrifier, the one who strikes all, in Drasil, which means horse. So Yggdrasil is actually known as Odin's horse. Now, the context with that is that Odin hung from Yggdrasil to learn the runes and to gain knowledge. So it was like Yggdrasil carried him to that knowledge, so that's why it's called Odin's horse. In Havamal stanza 138, Odin says, "I know that I hung on a windy tree, 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows from where its roots run." And then stanza 139, "No one gave me bread nor a horn. I looked down. I took up the runes. Screaming I took. I fell then from there." So he hung there until he had his knowledge, which a lot of people know the basics of. Arguments on whether that's all dead or just the dishonored dead. From what I understand, it's all dead. Once you go into Helheim, once you go into hell, your blood is not needed. You're in hell, which isn't a bad thing. You know, it's not the Christian hell, obviously, but he's not devouring the corpses. He's just removing the blood from them. Excuse me. Now, according to one of the poems, Nidhogg is actually not alone at the roots, chewing on them. In Grimmismal 34, it says, "More snakes lie under the ash Yggdrasil than any old fool imagines. Going and Moin, they are Grafitnir's sons, Grabak and Grafalud, and Ofnir and Svanir will always, I believe, eat away at the tree's roots." So, Nidhogg is just one of many that is chewing on the roots of Yggdrasil. Now, another fun fact about Yggdrasil is that there are many animals that live in and among Yggdrasil. You know, like I mentioned, there's more than just Nidhogg as far as serpents or dragons go. But there's also Ratatosk or Ratatosker. It depends on your pronunciation, but I personally say Ratatosk. It means drill tooth. It is actually a squirrel that lives in Yggdrasil, and he travels from the base in the roots where Nidhogg is up to the eagle that lives at the top of the tree. So when he goes between the two, he is constantly spreading insults. He is actually causing drama between the two. He loves gossip, and he is going between the two saying, "The eagle called you this. Needhogg, did you know the eagle said this? And then he goes to the eagle and he's like, you want to know what Needhogg said to you? Needhogg said this. And so he's constantly going back and forth and causing drama between the two. Arguably, you could say that if it wasn't for Ratatosk, that Needhogg and the eagle might get along. However, if they got along, it's possible that Needhogg would go to the top of the tree, and then who knows what that could mean for all of the realms. There's not much known about the eagle. We know a little bit about Needhogg, but the eagle, it's been described in the Prose Edda to possess the knowledge of many things, and it must be a lot bigger than a normal eagle because sitting between the eyes of the eagle is a hawk, and the hawk is named Vedfulnir. So it's possible that the hawk is associated with knowledge, kind of how Odin has Hugin and Munin, who fly out and gather knowledge and bring it back. It's possible that maybe the hawk flies out and gathers knowledge and brings it back to the eagle. But that part is unsure because there's not a lot that's written about or known about the eagle. So there's other creatures that live in Yggdrasil. So on the roof of Valhalla stands two animals, which is the goat Heidrun and the stag Eikthynir. The stag spends its day eating the new cuttings from the tree, and the goat eats the leaves. It's also said that from the udders of the goat flows endless streams of mead into a big tub in Valhalla. Every evening after the warriors in Valhalla have been practicing for Ragnarok, they will sit down in this hall to relax, eat the meat from the giant pig called Sheminir, which I can guarantee I said wrong. It's Saehrimnir, and drink the mead from the goat. There's also among the branches, there's 4 stags. I'm probably going to mispronounce these as well. I'm going to do my best. There's Dain, Dvalin, Dunir, and Durathor. So they're also eating the leaves of the tree. Now, the second root of the tree is in Jotunheim. At that root, there is Mimir's well. It's the well of wisdom. It belongs to Mimir. Every day, Mimir drinks from it using the horn called Galahorn. It's the same horn used by Heimdall, therefore it's possible that they each have one. I very seriously doubt that they're sharing their horn. I don't think Heimdall went to Mimir and was like, hey, let's take turns. So I feel like it's possibly more of a title or a description of the horn. Mimir doesn't keep the well just for himself. He does allow others to drink from it, but they have to pay a price. Odin was allowed to drink from it, but he had to give his right eye as payment. Mimir's well is possibly and this is arguably, a lot of people write and say that that's the only great thing in Jotunheim. The rest of it's just awful. That's not necessarily true. I feel like a lot of people write that because of the views of the Jotuns, and a lot of people are like, well, Jotuns are just giants and beasts, and, they live in the wild, and they're not anything, but the gods are even part Jotun. Odin is part Jotun. It's a Christianized view of it's different, therefore it's bad. And that's not the case. It said that not much grows in Jotunheim besides trees and grass. There are many rivers that it's filled with fresh water that seeps down to nourish the roots of the tree. That sounds amazing. It sounds like, a lush forested area, and I'm not sure how that's supposed to sound grim. So the third root is actually in Asgard, right next to the well named Urdur. Next to this well, there's a hall where 3 female beings called the Norns live, and they are named Urdur, Skuld, and Verdandi. Now, the Norns are a lot of times viewed kind of like the Greek fates. It's a little bit more complicated than that. We will get more into that on another podcast. But each morning, the Norns pull water from the well. They collect earth and clay and actually pour it over Yggdrasil. So they are actually in charge of caring for that root of Yggdrasil. If they don't do this, the tree will begin to rot. It said that the water from this well is magical and it's sacred to everything that it touches. Besides Yggdrasil, it will become white. It said that it would become as white as the inside of an eggshell. So swans are actually in this water. And that's why swans are white. In Norse mythology, the color white is, cleanliness, pride, beauty, things like that. It's also the same area that the gods and goddesses have their daily meetings or their daily gatherings where they would cast judgment if there was something that needed to be taken care of. So it's also said that at Ragnarok, the last two humans, a male, Liv, and female, Livtresser, will find shelter inside Yggdrasil. Here they will stay until it is safe to return to the new world. They will become the ancestors of all future humans. Now, according to Adam of Bremen, a German medieval historian, there was a great tree in Uppsala, Sweden. It had branches that were always stretched around it. This tree was always green, even in winter. It is unknown what kind of tree he was writing about, but it is possible that it was a pine tree. According to Adam, the pagans who lived here made sacrifices to the gods at a nearby lake. So, while yes, Yggdrasil is viewed as a ash tree, a lot of people associate pine trees with Norse mythology as well because they're evergreen. Now, unfortunately, something else that I'm going to cover in this podcast is that there are a lot of people who use the pine tree as a symbol of hatred, which sounds silly, right? It's a tree. How do you use a tree as a symbol of hatred? Well, there are white supremacist groups that use the pine tree as well as, Mjolnir, Othala, Algiz. They're using symbols that are important to Norse mythology to support their white supremacist rhetoric, which is so far from the truth. And that's one reason that I started this podcast, is I wanted to help educate and to show that it's the All Father, not the Some Father, and that there are Norse pagans that are good. There are Norse pagans that are trying to take our symbols back and educate and show that, white supremacists and things like that are not welcome among us. So that's going to wrap it up for my first episode back. I hope you all enjoyed listening to the facts about Yggdrasil. I'm going to open up the Q&A if you have any questions. On the next podcast, we're going to start going over the different realms and explaining who lives there, any facts that are known about them, any deities that live within them, things like that, so that we can get more in depth into what each realm has to offer or is part of the mythology. So I hope you all have a wonderfully chaotic day, and I will talk to you soon.